Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Black Lightning. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, this episode, I'm assuming, is supposed to be kind of like a backdoor pilot for the Painkiller spinoff. Interesting, obviously, we kind of, and I don't know where to really start. It's interesting because it's like, tonally, I feel like this actually feels more like Arrow than it does Black Lightning. But I guess it's also, it's almost like a mixture of the two, just because of who Khalil is right now. Like, obviously, the struggling duality between being Khalil as well as Painkiller is very similar, a very similar duality that obviously Jeff has to deal with in his own way. Not necessarily the same circumstances. It's actually closer to what Oliver probably went through. Just kind of, the lines between who he was as Oliver Queen before, who he was because of Lee and Yu and becoming a hero, and everything in between. The complexity of it. I think that's just kind of an interesting element of it. Also, like the city they're in the Akashic Valley, like that city, it seems like very like futuristic and stuff like that, which I thought was kind of interesting. It is interesting how the world works because, as they constantly say throughout the episode, like, there are no such thing as coincidences, which I think is interesting because it's like Grace and Anissa are on their honeymoon in this episode, and they just happen to end up in the same place that Khalil has been for like at least probably a good chunk of this past year. It's actually interesting too because in his journey, kind of, especially like when you got like the like comic booky opening thing they've always done. That kind of heavily reminded me of like when Wally kind of was like, the reason why Wally's the Zen dude that he is now. It kind of reminds me of like Wally's journey of kind of like being Zen, like after everything that went down with his mom, like he needed to kind of like change and find his own path and everything. So it kind of heavily reminds me of that on a certain level too. But obviously, Grace ends up being kidnapped by some dude, which I was immediately like, oh, you poor bastards. You try to kidnap the wrong woman's wife. You try to kidnap the wrong woman, first and foremost, only because you got the upper hand on her. Grace would have messed you up on her own. But Anissa just, is like kicking ass. It's like, you didn't even realize you kidnapped a superhero's wife. That was a mistake. But then, like, obviously, Painkiller kicks in, and the moment he sees Anissa, he tries to kill her. But then we kind of see the new format of how Khalil, like, obviously, and I think that's so interesting because I guess that's supposed to represent the state of things, because it's no longer, I like that they changed the manifestation, where it was like before it was kind of like that hallway and it's like at the end of the door, like we saw in the opening recap and stuff, like what it was originally like with the Painkiller situation of Khalil locking him away. But now we see like it's manifested kind of more in like a dojo setting, and it's like I said, like his meditation, and it kind of manifested like that. And so Khalil's counting down every time Painkiller says the word bitch. It's like, that's one, that's two, that's three. It's kind of like, I gotta put you in timeout type of situation. So I thought that was interesting. Like I said, the new duality that they have in him being like, just give me back control, don't kill her, But for him, it's like, I like this interesting aspect to it where Painkiller's like, I'm in pain if I don't complete my orders. It's like this nagging, like, burning like pain that if I don't do this, like, it's been probably driving him crazy the past year, like, because, and I thought that was such an interesting aspect of like, Odell created you, so you should have beef with him, not me. It's like, no, Odell just split us up, but I've always been a part of you. The deeper, darker part of yourselves you never let kind of come out, like, kind of saying, like, because everyone's got that darkness in them. It's just Khalil's just manifests and is a lot stronger now. But it's like this was always there because you were always, the smiling, running kid. Because that bit of Painkiller came out the moment Khalil got hurt and he was kind of angry at the world. That's kind of the beginnings of Painkiller, like, but it's like we're the same person. I'm just like that darker side of yourself you try to like hide away from the world. But I've always been there. Odell just gave me power and a voice, so I just thought that was an interesting element. But luckily he was able to subdue Painkiller and stop himself from killing Anissa. But then we kind of get introduced to the rest of his team, Filk, and we also meet Donald, and it seems like they're just regular humans, but I'm sure obviously they got their own past as well. Well, we do find out more about both of their past. Like Filk, it turns out he was part of the ASA. Is he some? I feel like if he was someone we had met from the ASA, they would have included that in the recap. But maybe I don't think. Like I said, I think he's someone we don't know, but he's someone trying to make up for his mistakes. Donald, what he said, he was a Marine and he wasn't able to get the help he needed. It's just like, and I think that's going to be I think that's an interesting time for a storyline like that potentially, because obviously we have that with Bucky's story in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier about PTSD and trauma and how you kind of, how that's a lengthy process. It's not like a quick fix, everything's fine. It's like, no, it is a process, and kind of learning and hearing about Donald's story about how, no, he didn't really get the full help he needed, just kind of, oh, here's some meds, be on your way, but it just wasn't enough, and then eventually he got to the point, start mixing alcohol with things, because even telling Anissa, like, oh, at one point he over-medicated, and it's like, she's like, did you try to kill yourself? And he's like, I honestly don't know. But it's like Khalil saved his life. So for him, it's like, yes, Khalil has a whole situation of being Painkiller, but there's still Khalil in there. He's saying that, basically everyone has that duality about them, that struggle with fighting with who they are, like who they are on the inside versus who they pretend to be on the outside. He's like, you can understand that better than anyone. But Anissa's like, whoa, I can't. Like, I've always been out. I've always been me. And he's like, you're lucky. Not everyone is like that. Not everyone can accept who they are on the inside and kind of reflect it on the outside. He's like calling her Anissa, but he's like, or should I call you Thunder? It's like, right. I guess, like, because I think he had talked about the fact is Khalil had talked a lot about her and her family. So even knowing that she's become, he even said like, oh, being a budding doctor, she was almost like, what? So regardless of him being away from the Pierce family, he still cares about them because they do matter to him. They were able to lead him down the path that he is on more than one occasion. Even when he himself probably feels like, I don't deserve forgiveness, they lent it out, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, Anissa's kind of a little pissed of like, right, I'm not going to be too like copacetic about because you did try to kill me, also because you interfered, my wife got taken. And it's like, Khalil saying like, I don't want to get involved because more innocent people could die of pain. And she's like, oh, you're being a coward. It's like, well, truth be told, it's like, you know better than anyone the killer that's inside of him now. So that's like, but for him, it's like, I do owe this family a lot. They have saved my life. They have helped me on more than one occasion. So I do owe it to them, because he says they're the only Filk and Donald are the only family. It's like, regardless of anything, the Pierces will always be like family, but there's always going to be that bit of dissonance because, they're not my family, because I've kind of, he always has a place in that family, but it's always it's a complicated thing, I think, for Khalil too, after all I've done, how could I ever be a part of this Pierce family, considering I've got orders to kill you guys? But that was also an interesting conversation between him and Filk, because it's like, there's like a tech bomb in his head that's supposed to help alleviate some of it. It can't completely get rid of Painkiller, but it's supposed to help him gain a little bit more control. And it's like, but seeing Anissa, that programming, it's still there. And the thing inside of his head, like, that Filk put can't override that completely. So it's a situation of, it still has to kind of be on Khalil's side of things, which I even like Filk being like, hey, yes, you saved me, but in my own right, I saved you. Don't treat me just like I'm the Asian tech dude. Like, we're kind of in this together. Like, I just need you to know that. Like, don't just chalk it up to like, oh, I'm the reason why you're here. I gave you the money, built this facility and stuff like that. Khalil took the money and built the facility and stuff like that. It's like, we're kind of in this together, kind of like partners. So don't get it twisted, bro, type of thing. So, Khalil finding the guy who's taking pictures and stuff. Like, once again, well, this is a different world we're living in, because I was about to say, like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm so curious what the original world of Black Lightning before Crisis on Infinite Earths were metahumans as widespread as they are, because I'm trying to think. I don't know if the Flash, prior had the Arrowverse really showcased metahumans worldwide. Yeah, they popped up in other places. Supergirl might have kind of insinuated that. I mean, because that's aliens and metas, but it's mainly aliens. Obviously, we've seen metas pop up in like Arrow, so yeah, they go to different cities, but the focal point of it was Central City. That's where most of the metas are, but I'm sure there were plenty of metas that obviously left and just kind of did their own thing around the world. So I'm curious, like, about the freelance situation. Were there pre-crisis, were there other metas kind of out there in the world that, well, we do know, because there was like that dude who teleports, kind of an assassin. Well, we also know about Gravedigger too. So like they were out there worldwide, because obviously this whole meta situation goes far back. So yeah, but it's just interesting to think, because I'm wondering like what a lot of these conversations have happened pre-crisis, because a lot of that is also has to be considered like, right, this is a brand new world we're living in, literally, because it's all on one planet. Well, most of it's on one world now, but it's just interesting that it's like, oh yeah, like it turns out they're taking pictures of people with certain brains, and it's like Grace's brain, and I guess also, I guess I wonder who he got a picture of. Was it Anissa, or was it Grace, or was it both? He took Grace because like it seemed like her brain matched, but it's like, it's hard to tell whether he saw the meta gene in her too. Well, at least that, like the meta aspect of her brain, because that was interesting that the camera takes pictures of that. But I love that Khalil is threatening the dude, and he's just like, "Oh, you almost ran me." He's like, "No, you're still alive, so I didn't run you over." He's like, "But I'm here to finish the job," and gets in the car, and he's like, "No, don't close the door." And but Khalil drives away. I loved that line and everything. But that guy had referred to it as kind of like a mind cult type of thing, and you're like, what's that all about? Because Khalil found all those laptops that were connected to people, and it seems the way Filk was kind of explaining it initially is like that basically like half of those people's brain is being used for like hacking, like because there was parts of their brains they're kind of fully utilizing, because the brain is nothing but that's what computers are kind of based on anyway, because your brain is legitimately a computer, just kind of a more organic one. But they're just kind of using it, like half the brain is kind of just like full processing as a computer to kind of like hack and unravel Bitcoin and stuff like that. But it's like, obviously, like they talk about it later, there's a deeper, darker element to this. Like, I don't know whether this is, I guess it's like the human mind maybe has so much potential, it can go beyond what a normal computer can. So if you can get a whole bunch of hive mind of human being brains, because the interesting thing too is like they're using like half the brain, because the other half of the brain is like deactivated, just kind of in a non-state. But Filk introduced Khalil to Woe, and that was interesting because he's like, Woe is like, she's kind of out in the valley, and she's someone, because the whole thing about the Akesh Valley, it's like where the past, present, and future flow through. And so I was kind of the way he was kind of talking about it, seemed like she might be kind of like borderline like a seer or something like that. At the very least, she has connections and stuff like that. That might be a thing we see later on. We never really got showcased in this episode, but he made it sound like there was like some like otherworldly type of thing going on there, like but maybe he's just talking about like her connections. Maybe he meant it literally type of thing, I don't know. But because Woe has an idea of who Maya is, like, I know who Maya is, great, you might want to be careful. Anyone that even like whispers that lady's name ends up dead. So also hooks Khalil up with a whole bunch of weapons and stuff like that, because obviously her and Filk, or as she says, Filky, they go way back. So what that connection is, obviously we only got a little time with her in this episode, but maybe in the future we get to spend more time with her, get to know her. But Khalil gets locked and loaded, goes inside the building, and obviously it's the conversation he has with Painkiller of like, all right, let me do my thing. And it's like, I can't take the chance that, it's like, yes, this device is going to help me, but it's also going to help you, because it's, he's like, no, it's mainly just going to help you get rid of me. But it's like, yeah, but you will never have to deal with Odell's orders anymore. You won't have to worry about anyone controlling you. Like, this will finally give you peace of mind, give us peace of mind. So I don't want to take the chance that you, like, it's like, I'm going to try and save Grace and get this tech. And if I need you to step in to finish things, I will call for you. And you proceed to have Khalil proceed to kick some ass. Once again, in that Arrow style of things, rather than just like Black Lightning, it's like, all right, we're not saving people, we're killing. They're like, oh, we're just beating you up. It's like, oh, we're straight up killing people. It's like, right, you're an anti-hero, so like, he's just not holding back, gunshots fired, slashing people up. And then at one point, he gets Painkiller, kick it. He's like, PK, you're up. He's about time. And then he kicks him serious. I even love at one point, throws his damn sword so hard, the dude like gets stabbed in the chest and falls back. I was like, that was a superhuman throw, obviously. You got the superhuman strength and everything. I actually thought it was really interesting. He rarely used the poison. He literally only used his painkiller powers, like, at the beginning of the episode. He didn't really use it throughout. Because obviously he knows, like, what pressure points to hit. So there was that point later on when that guy... I think he did it when the guy's ears were bleeding, so it's... But also, you never know. Like, he could always be subtly using it. It may not always be at its full frontal of, like, you know, like he was using it against Anissa. It won't always be that fully aware and straight up, I think. But, yeah. I even love, like, how, like I said, just kicking ass. It's so interesting because like I said, it very much reminds me of Arrow, but it is that thing of, like, it's so crazy because, like, you wouldn't think it's a superhero show just because it's like, oh, this is, because, I mean, if you didn't know the preconceived stuff about him, you wouldn't know that this was a superhero show, you know, that it wouldn't, because it doesn't, once again, it's one of those things of, like, it's weird to say grounded, but, like, it's kind of got that Arrow feel of being grounded with, like, more science fiction. This show's just going to be just as science fictional as, like, Black Lightning is, you know? But it's just interesting to think about. I mean, because he is a meta now and everything, and it more so created, but he borderline still, you know? But I even love that moment where, like, he kicked everyone else's asses, and then those two ladies showed up, and Painkiller had this look on his face like, oh, he's looking around like, did you not see what I did when I murdered everyone else? All right, fine. You want to go at it? Let's go. And proceeded to take them down, too. So I just thought that was just, like, an interesting moment, just like a little, peek into PK's personality. Like, all right, you want to go? All right, let's go. You know? So Grace kind of ended up saving herself, but he was going further in to find, you know, the tech. But, you know, Maya had to play set to blow, and it's like, all right, we got to get out of here. But... you know, and he was almost thinking about just staying because even, like, Khalil had to come to him like, hey, let's get out of here. Like, you know, it's the thing of if one of them dies, obviously they both die. But then he's like, maybe that's for the best. He's just like, I'm just in so much pain and I'm just need to hurt people. And it's just like, it's too much. And he starts crying because he's like, she was my mom too. Because now I think... whereas Khalil's been getting some peace of mind, I think the same thing has happened to Painkiller, where it's like Painkiller isn't just a program. Painkiller is you. He's the shadow to your light type of situation, you know? But I think Khalil's talking to him that we will find a way forward, that we like you said, we were one person, but they split us up with all that stuff. Odell did, but it's like we will find a way to become one again. It's like, so for now we have to get out of here, so... I liked how that kind of all ended up working out. Obviously, the conversation between Anissa and Khalil, and it's like, obviously for him, he's like, you know, he's still in the state that he was in, you know, when he left Freeland, but for him, it's like he's better because, you know, he's kind of found friends, got a family of sorts. As he was kind of saying in the beginning, a family he kind of pieced together. And obviously, Anissa's kind of happy to see him in his state, and he's asking him about Jennifer and stuff. And it's like, yeah, she's good. She's changed. It's like, right. Are you going to tell him about that? It's like, nah. I'm wondering, because she looks different, would Khalil still feel that urge to kill her, considering she doesn't look the same anymore? Like, maybe who she is, because regardless of her looking different, her essence and who she is as a person is still there. Maybe that will cause issues. I don't know. It's something to think about. Because I was wondering if that's still being... But for him, it's like, well, he's got his own demons to deal with. Don't want to kind of throw this on him about Jennifer and everything. But for him, he's like, he doesn't want to see Jennifer until he's able to fix him. So don't even tell her where I'm at. Like, promise me. Like, he'll come find her the moment he figures his situation out, you know? And, yeah, I think this is a really good path for Khalil. Obviously, him, Filk, and Donald are finding out, like, obviously there's something deeper, darker about this, but they don't know what. And it's like, for him, it's like, yeah, there's so many, like, tourists and people that are being abducted, but, like, Maya's got so much control over so many people, and she's just allowed to do whatever she wants, because so many people turn blind eye to it. And Khalil's like, except for us, so him and his team are going to be handling things here. But I like the reveal at the end, where it's like, she calls up, we see Odell, and it's like, oh, you're his daughter. Interesting. Well, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We know the ASA was up to some super shady stuff. I wonder, was this a project that's like, it's disconnected from the ASA because maybe it was like an ASA, like it was under the ASA umbrella, but maybe there were so many like what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of shell companies type of things that like, so her operation is so off the books that even when the ASA fell, she didn't suffer from it. So it seems like, you know, we're still, and I think it's nice to make it so that this is still Odell related, because that's the reason why Khalil is the way he is. My son, it's because of him that he ended up having to kill his own mom. Like, so I think, especially considering like he let Odell live, granted, like left him in a very terrible state, but it's interesting. And also that his daughter Maya has that same perspective too of there's no such thing as coincidences, Daddy, because it's like, you know, it's like, oh, he just happens to be in the same place that, I mean, he's been here the entire time. It's just now it took things lining up into place for you to find out that you've been operating in the same city, never knowing like, oh, one of your dad's quote unquote pet projects is kind of running free. So like I said, I think it's interesting too to know that, like I said, he's probably like recovering stuff like that. There's a watchful eye on him, but it's still a thing of Maya's able to kind of run rampant. So I'm curious, or will you kind of feel any of, once again, it's probably like whatever she's doing is such Akashic Valley that it's probably not going to bleed out into like Black Lightning, especially considering this being the final season and everything. But yeah, it makes you really interested to see where the story of Painkiller would go, you know, as, you know, Khalil struggle with that duality and, you know, finding out about Maya and what she's actually really up to, what her end goal is. So I'm under the impression that Painkiller is still happening. Just because this episode aired doesn't mean that that's still a thing. The reason why I bring that up, because the other spinoff, Green Arrow and the Canaries being a spinoff of Arrow, yeah, it had its backdoor pilot, but the CWs decided not to go forward with it. That information came out in January, but I didn't find out about it until last month, March. So I do have a video talking about that a little bit. That's going to be going up tomorrow. But tomorrow, yes, tomorrow. So that's, you know, so I don't know. I hope that it's still going on, because I'd love to see like where this would go. And I'd also like, because at least in some shape or form, this could also be like keeping the world of Black Lightning going in some shape or form. Because there's still stuff from Black Lightning they could pull into Painkiller if they decided to keep going. That was kind of like one of my hopes for like Green Arrow and the Canaries, because I just wanted to know, like, to continue that story, especially with new and old characters in certain regards. Like I said, I did a whole video kind of talking about it. So, but yeah, like I said, I hope the CW does continue that, because I think this would be interesting having like, because this will be our first like anti-hero. Like, especially with someone with circumstances like Khalil. Like I said, the closest thing that could be comparable, I think, is Arrow. So having kind of an Arrow vibe in a more science fictional world, and what that necessarily, it's, once again, it's kind of Black Lightning, Flash, and Arrow kind of like tonally mixed together in certain regards. So I don't know. And also, like I said, get to know Filk and Donald more, but also like know where Khalil's story takes him going forward from here. Just a lot of stuff like that, you know. So I'd be really curious to see it. So really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.